All right.
All right,
It
we're
looks
here.
what it looks like we're live. I'm gonna do one of those things where I like hop onto YouTube and we get like feedback going and stuff like that. Because I think
Oh yeah, that's good.
you
That's
look
good.
pretty
Yeah.
pixelated
Although we
on
should
my end. Yeah, I don't know.
really,
Yeah, we're just
I'm
gonna.
on. It still says I am an unstable connection.
Oh. Okay, I do see we're live. Let's just pull it up.
And now I hear an echo. Why? Oh, because I'm probably in YouTube as well.
Yeah, that's you. At least on my end, your screen is actually black on YouTube, so there's nothing there at all.
Oh my God,
We don't
what is
need to see
going
you.
on here?
We don't need to see you. What are we talking about this week, Matt? What have you been up to? I can tell you what I've been up to. It's not interesting, but it is a thing. Do you want me to do that while you're testing?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
Let's
so
do that.
yet again, I've been asked to travel, so I'm doing it. And listen, like companies are stopping travel. There's policies going in. I won't get into the economy and stuff like that, but things are changing. It's like an evolving situation here. So I think that at the very least, a lot of companies are deciding to not travel just in the interim as we get things figured out. As one, like the system accommodates to everything that's going on. At the same time, there's like regulations changing. There's like stuff, at least within the airplane aero travel system is changing. And long story short, I'm traveling, but it may be the last time I travel for a bit as we figure out whatever our policies are and stuff like that. Just trying to be fiscally responsible, I think, is what a lot of companies are looking at. So this being the last kick of the can, I'm bringing my significant other with me, and we're going to go around New York. The problem I've got is that I'm going to leave them alone for a couple days to go around the city. And listen, I understand that this is probably not a concern for anybody else, but I'm a small town person who definitely is like a little bit overwhelmed maybe by just how much is
Hmm.
going on in New York. And what I'm trying to say is that I'm getting comfortable with that idea or getting used to like just letting her go and do everything. But I'm not overprotective or anything like that. I'm just maybe more paranoid than anything else. But I'm looking forward to a trip to New York, while at the same time being a little bit uneasy about letting someone just roam around the city. And we're talking about it like an adult here. Like, I'm sure it will be fine. But also, I do realize like New York is very busy if you've not seen it. We've been to bigger cities, sorry, like Tokyo, for example, or Osaka or Kyoto, but still, there's a little bit of reservation on my part to just let her go. But what do you do when you bring your partner to another city and you're speaking? Do you just sort of like set like a list of things to look at, or how do you approach this?
Am I? Do you see me now?
Yeah, yeah,
Is my video better?
you are perfect.
Oh,
That's
good.
all you
I
needed
just
was a
had to.
monologue. It's someone to
I
steal the
needed.
mic. Yeah, hog the
Uh,
mic, and Matt will
and
come
I
back right away.
and I left StreamYard and I came back in, and that was
Okay, maybe sometimes that happens too.
yeah, yeah.
The question is
Um,
more like, do you normally like plan this all out? Like I was gonna say, hey, you can hang out with a friend of mine in New York if you want to during the day.
so every time we've gone to New York in the past, I guess last time I was there was with Datadog, and when we'd go together, both of us had offices in New York City, and
Ah,
so if I was there for work, she would go there for work. I,
that
it
would
was
work.
it was that was before Stella. Um, I don't think we've been back to New York with Stella. Um, oh, uh,
Oh, here we go.
I, I think we have actually. Um, and we brought along Tony's mother,
Oh, interesting.
and so she took care of. Yeah, oh, that's right. Because we went for one of the I guess the one of the Christmas or holiday parties.
Unleashed? Is that what it's
Yeah,
called? Yeah. Okay.
is that what it's called? Yeah, yeah, and brought along Tony's mother, Stella's grandmother, and so she was able to take care of Stella while we were out.
Oh, nice.
Um, and yeah, I mean, because I mean, I guess because Tony is a lot more. You know, we're not from a small town. We lived in downtown,
Is
Boston
cosmopolitan
for
the
a
right
long.
word? Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
so
Big
so
city.
I don't think that was ever a worry. Even uh, when I go somewhere with my maybe not so much when I was my parents. Well, now it's just my mother. My dad's passed away, but with my mother, if she comes with us to, Oh, one time, Tony and I went to Amsterdam, and my mother came along, um, and we got a big enough place so it wasn't a
Hmm.
problem. But uh, my mother would, is fine, figuring out the transportation systems and going on her own adventures. And so I guess I assume the same of Tony, and I know that she does that. So I guess it's not really, yeah,
Yeah, you're
causing
probably right.
politics.
It's probably
Right.
me like projecting. You know what I mean? I'm sure she's fine. I was thinking
But
about
there are
like
some
what
people,
day activities are there, that kind of thing.
yeah. But there definitely, I know there have been some people in our lives who, um, give them, just point them to a subway map and they'll
Just go.
panic and be scared of it for the whole
Oh,
day.
yeah, that can certainly
And
happen too. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know, I guess it depends.
We will find out. It feels like sink or swim, and I guess that doesn't feel fair to me.
Yeah,
He's like, you'll either love this or you hate it. I hope you love it.
yeah.
Some of it's probably fine. I mean, the main thing is like making sure you've got the Uber app, you've got a data plan,
Right,
and like
right.
Google Maps is offline or whatever, just in case. I
Yeah.
had that scare. Maybe it's because I had that scare the first time I was there. I didn't have any cell reception because Canadian
Hmm.
phone plans are a whole thing. And then I felt a little bit overwhelmed, and maybe I'm projecting that as
Yeah,
well. But like just being lost in a big city is not a good
yeah, yeah,
feeling. Whatever. I mean,
yeah.
I learned.
I mean, I mean, I sometimes have that myself when I've gone traveling for on my own.
Right.
Um, Sometimes it's a little bit scary to go out, and um, I've definitely spent way too long in the hotel in the morning trying to figure out, well, what am I going to do? Because there's so many choices, and I don't know what to do. And I
You're
know I've
describing me to a T. Yes.
I know there have been plenty of mornings in in Kuala Lumpur or in even in Tokyo or Hong Kong or Melbourne. I can remember many times where I'm just sitting in a hotel, like scrolling through, Google Maps, trying to figure out, well, what do I do? And then fretting about how do I use the subway system in some other location. Um, Even with I mean, at the time I was doing those types of trips, I was doing, 100, flight miles a year.
Wow.
And yet I had the same problems. I just, well, what do I do? I mean, it was always good when I could, if I was in a very foreign city and I had, um, th- there are cities where I would expect that to happen and cities where I wouldn't expect it to happen. And most of the cities where I would not expect it to happen is where it would happen.
Uh,
And the cities where I would expect it to happen because of such a incredible language barrier, like in Vietnam and in Cambodia, those I was fine. Like, okay, let's go explore the city, be an idiot, and well, be an idiot because I'm this tall
just be
white
me.
American,
Yeah.
um, and like being in Vietnam on Independence Day, the day that the Americans left, um, and yeah, and I don't know. That's not a good answer.
No, no, it's
Yeah.
fine. I feel like if between the lines there is a bit of like when you don't expect to need to plan, have a plan,
Yeah.
and when you
Yeah.
have a plan, chances are you'll be fine. So it sounds like
Yeah.
having a plan. The good news is that she's got a ton of stuff planned,
Yeah.
like a
Yeah.
laundry list of things. So I think the main thing is going to be sort of that decision paralysis, and maybe deciding something
Right.
beforehand. The other good news is that we've got a couple days together prior to exploring the
Mm-hmm.
city, so we can like revisit.
So what are you two going to do together?
Apparently watch so if I told you I'm scared of heights, maybe this hasn't come up yet. So we're walking
Uh-huh.
the Brooklyn Bridge, which I'm really not looking forward to. I gotta
Hmm.
be honest
Okay.
at all. And I understand like it's super scenic and stuff like that. I have
Right.
noticed though on recent trips, because I think my palms are sweating just thinking about it. I think what she does is like tries to get me on something scary, but what I've noticed is if I'm looking through the camera, and it's something about I think it's
Mm.
the LCD on the Sony's, like where it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
look real, it looks like you're watching a video.
Mm-hmm.
There's some weird there's something that goes on with my perception where if I'm
Right.
looking through, it's like that whatever OLED LCD screen that you watch
Right.
the Call of Viewfinder.
Right.
That's not. It seems to distance me from the scene a little bit. Whereas,
Uh-huh.
like I've noticed
Uh-huh.
looking through my Nikon, which is an optical prism, it doesn't help at
Mm-hmm.
all. It's like no, this is too real.
Mm.
So whatever refresh rate they're at, like maybe it's 60 or something like that, it's perfect
Right.
because it doesn't look real to me, and then I'm just not scared as long as I look through the
Wow.
lens. I also notice the same thing if I'm just looking at the LCD screen, I'm fine. So case in point, like we were down in Washington looking at some like outcropping of rock that was just basically like this little
Right.
pillar just hanging out in the middle of nowhere off a cliff. And she took the dog with her, and I just couldn't even look at her. I was so scared. But I did notice when I took up the camera to take a photo, like, oh, oh, this is working pretty well. So I started just like sort of walking around with the
Huh.
camera in front of my face, and it seems to help. So that's what I'm going to
Okay.
use to help. But we're at least going to go see. I guess it's Dumbo, and then
Yep.
look at New York, and then come across back over the Brooklyn Bridge. Probably going to see Bryant Park, Central
Hmm.
Park. Hopefully, I haven't really seen a lot of New
Hmm.
York, even though I've been there a couple times. So
Yeah.
it'd be good for me to actually like see other places.
Well, I mean, one of the great things, especially since I mean, with you're going to be near the Datadog office, I assume your hotel, or maybe is it closer to where Dash? Where's Dash?
It'll be closer to
At
Javits,
the
but that's still
piers?
pretty close to.
Okay. So one of the and if you're near Javits, I mean, the bottom of the High Line is, I think, right there.
Right.
Do you
Yeah.
know
So
about the
that's
High
definitely.
Line?
Yeah. Yeah. So that's on the books for
Yeah.
sure.
Okay. You've been there?
I have not.
Oh, it's great.
I, I,
That's
I
where
know it.
Tony and
There's
I,
so many people
where I
that.
proposed to Tony.
That's so cool.
I proposed on the High Line.
I will let her know. That is
Yeah.
awesome. Was it
Yeah.
busy? Because when we drove past in the Uber, it was quite busy.
No, I mean I mean there were definitely people up there. But I mean the scary thing with the High Line, if you have like a ring that happens to be the most expensive small item you've ever purchased in your life, is that the High Line is this elevated former railroad,
Right.
and there are plenty of places where there are holes that go right down to the street.
Right.
Holes that a ring would fit right really well, right, going right through. So that was a little nerve-wracking.
I can just imagine the trepidation as
Yeah.
you're holding the ring.
Well, yeah. I mean, I actually I laid out the map ahead of time. And I was like, oh, well, let's see. Oh, and then I was able to give to her over the map and like make sure she had over the map.
Ah,
Yeah,
smart.
yeah,
So you can create a funnel, so you can direct the spillage.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, the Highline looks good. We're going to do just thinking about heights. The Edge, I think, is another thing we're going to try to do, which is I think from the Datadog office you can look down on it. And I always thought it was an office party with like such a small town person. I had no idea what it was.
Hmm.
I thought they were just constantly having office parties with champagne. But no, it's like this tourist thing where they charge you for champagne, and
Oh,
everyone
okay.
wants to be fancy, so they go there dressed up.
Oh.
And yeah, I had no idea. I kept looking down.
Wow.
Luckily, I said nothing to my coworkers. Now, of course, it's out there.
Right.
I kept looking down, like, how did they get any work done?
They're always drinking.
Yeah, of course. I didn't know what it was because from our viewpoint, and listen, our
Right.
floor is pretty high up, so we can look down
Yeah.
on the edge, which is kind of awesome. We have an amazing office. Listen, it's quite nice.
Yeah.
But I didn't know the edge was the edge because all I was seeing was sort of the top part. So it literally just
Right.
looked like a piece of the building. I didn't realize there was like an overhang.
Right.
I just thought it was
Right.
like a penthouse or something like that. Like the scale is very weird too because we're actually a few blocks away, so it's small.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really I got to make it clear, like I don't know a lot about New York, and I'm constantly amazed by everything. Whereas like a lot of people who do this research are like, obviously that's the edge. Come on.
Yeah, I mean the other thing that I would love to be able to see one day, but I've only seen from the Datadog office, is to actually try what I assume it's a pickleball court on the top of the building that has the I assume it's still a Microsoft building or a Microsoft,
The one next door,
almost
I
next
think
door.
that's GitLab. Yeah. Or
Is it
sorry,
GitLab now, or
GitHub? Sorry, GitHub.
GitHub?
My apologies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right next door. Yeah,
But
11.
so yeah, right at the top of that, there is this small, what looks like a tennis court.
Yeah.
I think it's more like a pickleball court, but is enclosed in like a mesh. And I've never seen anybody actually playing on there. But apparently we had heard that whoever has the office at the top of the building, it's his private court.
Oh, okay. Because I think we now have a floor in that building as well. We sort of rent
yeah?
out space. Yeah.
Hmm.
I will
Have
ask
like a
around.
bridge.
As well as while I'm there, I'll be meeting with somebody who works out of that office, so I can ask them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's find out. So
Yeah.
I got to rewind a little bit. What is pickleball?
Yeah, so I didn't know anything about it either,
Okay.
but it is apparently all the rage at the moment.
Okay.
There are pickle. In fact, we were in Victoria pretty recently,
Right.
and there's a whole huge set of pickleball courts in the little park that we went through in Victoria. Um, and everywhere I've been in the last few couple years has had large groups of pickleball courts, and I've seen it on the news. I've seen it. Pickleball is a thing. Ask me to describe it, I can't really. It's like a I don't know, tennis with a wiffle ball or some sort of lighter ball that moves slower. And the rackets are closer to, I guess, larger ping pong rackets or
It's like
paddles.
a paddle. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And it was created within about a mile of where I live now. So
Very
the
cool.
first pickleball court was on Bainbridge Island. And there's a few parks here that have, 20, 30 pickleball courts.
Huh.
Fun fact.
Oh, and I keep mishearing pickable, but it looks like when it moved to
Like pickle,
Hawaii.
like
Yeah.
the whatever
Yeah.
the vegetable that you pickle becomes a pickle.
The vegetable that you pickle. Is it
Yeah, what is
possibly
that? Cucumber?
is it a cucumber?
Is it cucumber? I often get cucumber and zucchinis mixed up.
I
So
think yeah, one of them's the different textures inside. So the reason I mentioned that is because of course I had to Wikipedia this while we were talking. So in Hawaii, it got renamed as puka ball, but yeah, I could also hear both puka ball,
yeah, yeah,
pickleball. Yeah. Now,
pickleball.
as we were talking through all this, yeah, so it does look like a tennis court. It's a little bit smaller. Um,
Yep.
just compared to a tennis court, it looks like you could probably fit 6 in the same area that you would fit
Hmm.
2 tennis
Yeah.
courts. And yeah, it's a little. It started with a wiffle ball kind of ball with like holes,
Hmm.
perforated holes in it, and apparently it's a little bit different now. But
Yep.
yeah, it looks fun. Yeah, I like the small court kind of maybe
Yeah.
badminton feel without all of the breakneck speed. Badminton, people assume
Yeah.
badminton's a slow sport, but it definitely is not competitively. It's
Yeah.
breakneck speed. Yeah,
Right. And watching
oh,
ping pong champions, so it's crazy.
yeah, or
I
table tennis.
remember I
Yeah,
went to
yeah.
work. I worked at a company called Playster once, and
Okay.
there we had a little ping pong table, a regular ping pong table in the office, and it was quite popular. A lot of us played, and then we hired somebody, and as he was getting interviewed, actually, as he was getting interviewed, he's ping pong. I play a little bit of ping pong.
A
Great,
little bit. Yeah.
and that was it. That's like all that was said. And then first day at work. He crushes everyone he plays. And we said, well, we thought you didn't. I mean, we thought you kind of played it, but you didn't really say that you were really good. It's like,
Right.
I used to be really good, but I'm not anymore. I mean, I only ever hit number 2 in the U.S. So I wasn't, and that's a number of years ago. I was like, what?
Olympic level table tennis player.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I'm just normal. I think it was Matthew Matthews, I think, or William Williams, something like that.
That
Yeah,
is amazing.
yeah.
So speaking of just a slight tangent here. So when I first got started out into, I kind of did like a lot of hardware for a while, and then I moved into software for a bit. One of the things I noticed here was you could sort of see the boom, bust, and echo by how many used table tennis or foosball tables were on Craigslist, because it seemed like one of those things that all the
Oh,
startups would buy, but it seemed like an indicator. It's like
right.
how well is the table tennis used market working, or like how many foosball tables are on
Right.
Craigslist trade,
Yeah.
which is it. It's a
Hmm.
negative indicator, folks who are watching this
Right,
later,
right,
maybe in the chat.
right,
So the more there are, generally, it means the more people at the same time are getting rid of
right.
it, which is like generally it's
Yeah.
just one of those touch points. I think.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think if the Datadog office in New York ever had. Well, I know we had a table that could be converted into one, but I don't think
Oh,
it ever really got converted into it. Plus, it was always the wrong kind of surface.
right.
But that said, the Boston office had a shuffleboard, but not the shuffleboard that you see in, like, I don't know, camps where you're pushing that big stick and
Right.
it's got the prong that goes around and pushes that thing across. This was I think it's called shuffleboard. It's a long table,
Hmm.
and you got these metal pucks, and you'd like dust the table with sawdust or something fancier than sawdust, and you push these little pucks down. It's much like the same rules as shuffleboard, the big version, but
Okay.
this is. I mean, I've seen them in bars and at the Datadog office.
Apparently, this is called American shuffleboard.
American shuffleboard. Okay.
Or table shuffleboard. Yeah, this is me quickly
Yeah.
googling
Yeah.
like dusted table sport.
Yeah. We there were shuffleboard boards tables that you could buy, regular ones, but instead of that, Datadog went and found a custom builder of
Oh
shuffleboard,
yeah, there you go.
and so it was
That's the right
like
way to do it, though.
custom
Yeah,
built. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't know if it. I think they needed to get rid of it, and they sold it to one of the employees for like rock bottom because
Gotcha.
it didn't really have a place in the office anymore.
It's still pretty
We were
cool.
getting a little more serious.
But I guess the other thing is to say, like, hey, if you're just starting out and you want to make people in the office,
Hmm.
happy to give them something as a small sort of startup. Don't buy
Yeah,
the new ones. Buy the used ones. Buy the used American
yeah, yeah,
shuffleboard table.
yeah.
You can get it for a lark.
Well, the problem with anything used, if it's been, you need to have a surface that is perfectly flat,
Oh,
and they're super long, so they're going to break apart in 2 or 3
okay.
pieces, and so they need to reconnect up tightly and flat, and so that there's no seam. And so I think if
Hmm,
it's well used, that part might not be so good,
gotcha. You might need to like
and it like
replane or
totally
surface it
messes
or
up the
something.
game.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
We're talking competitive shuffleboard here. Yes.
which all games at Datadog were competitive. There was always either drinks or something else going on that.
Fair enough. And I have noticed that
And
there seems to be a theme amongst software engineers that like competition between teams, especially like maybe
yeah,
maybe not
yeah,
on the same team that's delivering a product, but
right.
but between teams seems to get pretty heated.
Oh yeah. And it's not always drinking, because once it was eating I think it's a matzo cracker without any liquids.
Okay.
So just trying to eat it's a very dry cracker, and trying to eat that without any water is quite a challenge. So whoever lost had to do that, and I won. So I got to,
See,
and I think there's a
no
YouTube video
regrets.
of me uh, watching somebody eat a matzo cracker
This
dry.
sounds scintillating.
Yes.
There is that one chip challenge going around. There's these things that you see people do, and you're like, "What? Why would
Yeah.
you?" Maybe for me, it's
Ice
heights.
bucket.
Like, yeah,
Yeah.
why would you need to jump off this thing and like rappel down the side of a building,
Yeah.
or maybe just don't. So one of them is
Yeah.
this one chip challenge, and I think it's got ghost peppers on it or something like that. But whenever I see the YouTubers doing this, I just think you could also just not eat the chip. I just, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It looks so painful. People go to hospitals.
Yeah.
Somebody passed away because of complications. You're like,
Oh
no,
my God.
just don't do any of this stuff. You don't
Yeah.
need this spice.
Yeah.
But I think they do it for the entertainment value. So the company will send them the free chip.
Yeah.
And maybe it's sponsored or whatever they do it on YouTube. But yeah, I'm just
And when you say
no.
a chip, are you talking like a tortilla chip kind of thing?
One. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to make a triangle, but like one
Okay.
rather large, but about this size
Okay.
tortilla chip. Dust it with
But it's got a
who knows what
Okay.
spice. Like just
something
it
evil.
has nope written all over it.
Yeah.
But I do find these like have you ever watched that series like Hot Ones, for example?
Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
get it.
I mean I
Like
don't get I do like the content though. I do like the whole setup is kind of silly to me, like the spice and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I do actually find like in terms of an interview setting, if you've seen
Okay.
some of these actors do a bunch of press junkets, like they kind of get maybe it's by
Right.
rote by the end of them. But the end of one
Right.
of those, you're getting like I don't it's like euphoric or so you're
People are in
getting
pain. Yeah.
people at their worst moment,
Getting the real answer.
and you're getting like they're trying to just cut to the chase. There's no hedging. There's no
Yeah.
soft edges around their answers. It's just like
Yeah.
No, let me die and like drink some milk, and we'll get to the next
Mm.
question. I do find like it sucks that they have to suffer. Honestly, I really don't want to like get pain on anyone. But I have noticed that the interview questions are answered quite a bit differently than
Okay.
to be elsewhere, and the host has it does a pretty good job of doing the research
Oh
before
yeah.
asking them. So like I didn't think they'd get me, but sure as heck watching it, I was like, okay, I can see the wrinkle here. I'm not buying any
Wow.
of these spices. I'm
Wow.
still not gonna eat anything hot. You're not convincing
Yeah.
me. However, watching people like try to answer through tears and then rub their
Yeah.
teary eyes with the
Oh
finger.
my God.
Oh,
Bad.
it's kind of like watching it. It's like a guilty pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to watch, but also it's entertaining.
We I remember once Tony was cooking with some really hot peppers. I forget what we were doing, but everything was fine. And she thought she washed her hands, but apparently she didn't well enough. And about an hour later, her hands started just burning up.
Oh,
And then it's like, well, what do you do? I tried to remember. Well, she put
oil, right?
one solution was alcohol. Put the hands in alcohol, and maybe that and it didn't really work. We searched around. Well, what alcohol do we have that we don't really want to drink? And we've had one bottle of Bols Yenever, which if Jason Yee ever sees this, he'll think that's the worst possible thing to use this because that's like precious. But we hate it, so we've used that, and that didn't work, so we dumped that. But then just little plates of milk and put the
Ah,
hands in the
the
milk,
oil
and
in the
that
milk.
cooled it down. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But my understanding is
So,
like it's oil. The spice is actually in an oil, and generally to
oh,
remove
okay.
oil, you use oil and use oil and milk. Again, I'm not
Hmm.
an expert, but the first thing I would have done
Okay.
is like olive oil.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would have been.
It took,
Go ahead.
yeah, it took a few hours for the
Yeah,
pain to go away, but yeah,
yeah. The thing you say is like it's easy to think about this now in the moment when you're not in pain, but when you're in
yeah,
pain, I can
yeah,
definitely see. You said alcohol, right? So reaching for a can of beer,
yeah,
that's alcohol. Like
yeah,
this will
yeah,
work,
yeah.
right?
Except we don't really have beer in the house often. So,
Yeah, we don't really have a lot of booze
um,
around here
but
either.
yeah. So I wasn't the one in pain. I'm like just trying to look up what to do, and she's like,
Right.
ah!
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine.
Um,
I've also got
yeah,
very sensitive skin. I mean, my nose is super red
yeah,
again today because I had to wear
yeah.
another face mask. And again, nothing wrong with face masks. Totally understand wearing them. However, my nose does not appreciate them. I wore it inside out this time, which I don't think
Yeah,
helped at all. I thought maybe the coating on the outside versus the inside. So
yeah,
doesn't look like it. But yeah, like hot stuff, if I get on my fingers, definitely irritates
yeah,
me right away. It just doesn't.
yeah,
It doesn't seem to be enjoyable to me.
yeah. Mm.
So I
Yeah, there
feel
was a
like
time I used to have
yeah.
I used to really enjoy a lot of hot sauce, but then I realized no, I prefer the flavor of the food and not just feeling the heat.
Oh,
And
interesting.
although there are, I mean, and I've had plenty of other hot sauces, but I always go back to one that I just and mostly because it's not just about the heat, it's more of the flavor of it.
Right.
And that's just the old standby that's been around forever, and that's Tabasco.
Ah,
Um,
my
and
partner loves Tabasco,
yeah,
so
yeah,
she's with you. Yeah, it's kind of like a
and we've had
nostalgia
so many
kind of.
others. Like, yeah, I mean, even like a local, like it's almost like
Right.
a craft brewing kind of thing, where
Right.
local craft hot sauces, and yeah, they have heat, but the flavor is kind of lacking.
And where do you stand on this? Is scintillating podcasting, I'm sure. Where do you stand on bay leaves?
It's kind of hard to believe that we only have one viewer. It's amazing.
Is it me?
Maybe
It could
I don't know.
be.
It could be you. I noticed that earlier there were two viewers and they were both me. Although now when I look at it, it says that viewer is me.
Oh,
So
okay.
I don't know.
Well,
I don't think I have a window open.
uh-oh.
Anyway, where's this? What's this next amazing question?
The next amazing question is bay leaves. It seems to be popular in the U.S., but not so much in Canada. Are you? No, not so much.
Bailey's Irish cream we're talking
No,
about, right?
bay
What?
space leaves. So they're
Bay
leaves.
leaves.
And bay spice
Ah,
might be the term that I'm looking for.
Old Bay spice
Yes,
or bay leaves.
yes.
They are
Old Bay
two
spice.
very different things.
Oh, are they? I thought they were the same. Okay.
Yeah. No. So
Aha.
bay leaves are the leaves, I guess, from a bay tree.
because I've had bay leaves and they're not good. So I was assuming bay spice was
No,
just
you
trash.
don't. You don't. You never eat a bay leaf.
Okay.
If you're
Okay.
eating a bay leaf, the cook hasn't taken it out in time.
There's a problem. Oh, okay. So is it one of those garnishes that people tell me to eat that you're not supposed
No,
to
no,
eat?
no, 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 no. It's like my mother always added bay leaves to the spaghetti sauce, and then you got to remember to remove them. I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you what the flavor of a bay leaf is, but people add bay leaves to the cooking and then yank them out before they serve because nobody wants to eat that crunchy old leaf.
It,
Um,
yeah, so it's described as tasting as like a cross between oregano and thyme, and I'd say that kind of tracks. It's just like chewing on a
yeah,
dried leaf.
yeah,
It tastes like
yeah,
oregano and thyme mixed together. It's
yeah.
not good. So for me, bay
But
spice just
Old
doesn't make any
Bay,
sense.
right? Old Bay. In fact, now I have to look it up. What is Old Bay?
We're learning a lot
Old
here. This is
Bay
the stream for
spice
Jason. Speaking
seasoning.
of like former coworkers, now current coworkers, yeah, we'll send him this way.
Yes, he would be a perfect person to add here.
Guest appearance.
What is Old Bay? It's from crab bakes to clam bake. Old Bay originated in Baltimore. Celery salt, red and black pepper, and paprika. And yeah, as I
Aha.
mean, I used to add it to fish, like anytime. At one point, I did a kind of this weight loss program when I worked at Microsoft.
Right.
There's a health club that everybody belongs called the Pro Club, and they had this program called 2020, and for several for what seems like forever, your only meal during the day is basically a plain chicken breast. You get a couple of them throughout the day, but a plain chicken breast with nothing added, and then gradually you get to add the seasonings. And when we were able to add stuff, Old Bay became a favorite.
This sounds awful.
Yeah. Well, but
Are there
my
any
weight
pros
went
for
from
the pro club? Okay, your weight went down.
well, the weight went from 300 to 210.
That is drastic.
Um,
In what time?
and I was able to keep it off. That was over like 4 months or 5 months.
That's a lot of
Maybe
weight
6 months. It must have been 6 months.
still.
And then that stayed off for a good 10 years.
Okay, so it was more like lifestyle, I suppose. More than
Yeah.
anything else.
I mean, they pair you up with there's a dietitian and a so either psychologist or psychiatrist, and group classes, and eating log. And if you don't do any of the things or any one of the things, you skip a week or two, then you have to pay the $9,000 for the program. Otherwise, Microsoft paid for it.
Ooh, okay.
So you were incentivized to pay attention and do it.
Right. So like the eating, you weren't eating logs. You were logging down what you ate.
Logging what you eat. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so I ate nothing but chicken and logs.
Good branch.
So many questions. The first would be like, listen, I've tried like a protein rich diet that doesn't have much else. I found that my brain power was diminished. Did you find that was like a Balmer effect for the amount of logs eaten versus code output? Like what happened there?
I don't remember what that. I mean, that was 20 plus years ago.
Right. But you
20 plus.
didn't really notice anything.
Yeah.
Okay, that's.
I don't remember it being bad. I mean, and they also paired you up with a personal trainer, and so you were working out 3 times a week along with this program. And I don't remember it being a problem.
Okay. I think the exercise is probably going to help you there too, because you're using your protein.
And you've got these people to ask questions. If you feel not good, then you just it's like, okay, well, let's add this thing. Wow. And the thing with that program was you start off with this basic thing, and then you get to add beans to it, to the meals, any meals that you have during the day. Okay, now you've added beans. Now we add this other thing. Okay, now we add fish. Okay, now we add, and the whole idea is you keep adding things slowly. 1 or 2 weeks between each thing gets added, and then hopefully, if you notice you start having cravings based on one food being added, maybe you don't have that food, or you control it.
Okay.
So it's interesting. Everybody's different, and so it's this experiment that you run on yourself.
Right.
to figure out what are the foods that do well
Gotcha.
for you.
So you're not building to like a Chipotle meal, because it kind of sounded like you're going sort of right to left here in the line.
Graduation is a burrito.
No, like you get the guac at the end, right? And listen, if
Oh,
you do the
okay, yeah,
program,
okay,
you don't pay $9,000 for the guac. It's free.
yeah.
Does
Yeah.
everyone at Microsoft do this program?
I don't know. I mean, I remember the first one to go through it, and the one that made it like a free benefit of Microsoft. The first one was Steve Ballmer,
Okay.
because one time we saw him up on stage at the company meeting, and he was like his big kind of roundish self, and going from a light blue shirt to a dark blue shirt, and then the next time we saw him on stage, he was a lot thinner. Like,
Right.
what happened to Steve?
Right.
And then it's like, oh, it's a 2020 program, and
Steve, I've never
2020
met him
got
in person, but don't get me wrong, he's a large person too, right? Like
he's
he's
a
quite tall.
huge guy.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. Like he
yeah.
looks like he's a football player kind of physique sort of thing. Okay.
He might have been, but yeah, he's. I mean, nothing professional. I don't think. I don't know, but
No,
he's tall and he's big.
yeah, yeah.
Boy, and then he was thin.
Right. Right. That must
I
have
don't
been
know
fun.
how long the thinness that lasted.
I honestly haven't heard of
Yeah.
Steve in a while. Some of the things that he had contributed to the Windows operating system, I was actually super interested in it. But I'm also, we've talked about
Hmm.
this before, I'm a minority a believer in like Vista Beta 2 kind of thing. I still remember
Hmm.
Vista Beta 2 release
Yep.
candidate 1 had so many cool things in it that were like just removed
Yeah.
last minute. And Balmer, that
Yeah.
was like his first big foray into, I'm sure he was in the operating systems prior to that.
Right.
This is his first big launch, and I actually really liked it. And people will use this as a foil to say,
Oh,
it
first
was
big
a
launch
failing.
after Steve left. After
Bill.
Bill left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And honestly, like Vista had a lot of promise, and it was just very sad for
Yeah.
me to see one what happened
Yeah.
to it, and two, like
Yeah.
the public perception of something that like pushing an operating system out. I don't think people understand like how many moving parts
Yeah.
are involved in an operating system release.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah. I mean, all
seems a bit
the
unfair to give somebody one crack at bat, right?
right. Yeah, all the amazing things that were in all the like early betas of whether it was Longhorn or
Yeah.
Whistler or Blackcomb.
Yes.
And I think it was Whistler, then came Blackcomb, and then in the middle came Longhorn. And Longhorn was called Longhorn because Longhorn is a bar halfway between Blackcomb and Whistler.
I did not know that. I knew they were all based on like BC areas, so like where I live for the
Yeah.
chat. But I did not know that. No, I thought one of those was server, the other was desktop, and then was the other Exchange? Was that the three?
No, I thought those were all
They're all
OSs.
OSs? Okay.
All,
One was definitely a server
and
OS, and the other one was
Longhorn,
client OS.
I thought Longhorn was coming in, was a release that because Blackcomb was taking so long, they created
Interim
Longhorn,
release. Yeah,
basically.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Longhorn turned into, was it 7? Windows 7?
I don't know.
It's been so long.
I don't remember where that was.
I used to spend a lot of time in like the Windows betas IRC
Yeah.
channel. Like I really was
Mm.
super interested in the actual features coming out, because back in the day, like open source was pretty cool, but really
Mhm.
in terms of like what operating system sort of had the hearts and minds
Yeah.
of the public, and maybe still does. Just in my circles, it's mostly around like cool things Ubuntu's
Yeah.
doing, or cool things Red Hat
Right.
might be doing. But Microsoft really had a lot of cool features that would come through, and it was fun to watch.
Yeah.
And these days, it's a lot more public, which is great. And also, it doesn't seem to be tied to like a CD release. So
Mhm.
you get things like Windows Terminal coming out, VS Code, like cool little pieces that you'd love to have as part of your OS build, like your custom WMI or whatever
Right.
that you push out for Windows. But I really do like the way that we're at now. And now I understand like Windows 10, Windows 11 is a whole thing, but Windows 10 as a long-term release with all the add-ons that have come out, like I
Yep.
actually think it's a pretty cool OS. And younger me would have thought this is amazing. These days, I just use a computer instead of being really excited about operating system technologies, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. So Whistler was Windows XP. Longhorn was Vista.
Gotcha.
And then Blackcomb, I think, never came.
Oh, really?
Because it kept going further and further out.
Kept getting pushed back,
Later
yeah.
renamed to Vienna.
Oh, I didn't know that. See, I realize that this stuff may
Yeah.
not be for everyone, but I find that really interesting. The like internal naming
Yeah.
and the things going around. So if you're attached to like on the inside, if you're attached to a big project like this that is being pushed around and stealing resources from other teams, there's a whole. It's not really politics, but there's a whole sort of trading horses thing that goes on. It's like, listen, I really need to push out this update to Notepad by next week so that we can make
Mhm.
our gold master, because back then you had to make a CD release. So
Right.
I'm going to steal Matt from you, but you can have, I don't know, Jane, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, Jane can work on your
Right.
database, but Matt needs to help me with the Notepad because I need somebody who knows this. And it's really
Mhm.
interesting to see the machinery kind of like turn and change form. And like your org chart
Right.
kind of doesn't matter when you've got something like a project with a lot of steam behind it. And it's really interesting to
Yeah.
see. I'm moving my hands a lot here because it's hard for me to like explain a Venn diagram of a big company. But like when you've got a company that's like 100,000 strong in terms of
Yeah.
developers, and they're not cogs, but you do need to think about them as sort of pieces on the
Right.
playing field that you can move around to get things out the door. And it's really interesting to see these like long, like multi-year releases come out, and then
Yeah.
people will be like, "Yeah, Vista's garbage." It's like, oh,
Right.
like
Right.
where, like where are you nitpicking? Like,
Yeah.
come on, as a whole, like this
Yeah.
thing took so many hours, and people like
Yeah.
years of people's lives are putting into these. And I think on
Yeah.
the public perception of things like a Vista launch or like a Windows ME launch or something like that, they really don't
Right.
understand just like the blood, sweat, and tears that go into
Right.
pushing an OS out. And
Right.
it's phenomenal to me just
Yeah.
watching
I
that stuff
think
happen.
I think the biggest problem with like Windows ME was it was always. I mean, I was at Microsoft when that came out, and it was always made for one specific purpose, and that was the home user
Right.
that was not really big on the internet, wasn't really definitely not for a business, and so many businesses bought it
Right.
thinking it's this low cost operating system,
Right.
and it's totally not for them. And um, you know, any event, Microsoft would say, no, don't use this for any commercial purposes or for any. And every consumer is thinking, well, it's just because Microsoft wants us to spend more money. No, it's a bad release for you. It's not. It's not the right thing. Um, and
It
yeah,
had cool features that we never saw since. Like you could embed a web page into your desktop with a scroll bar, which
hmm
of course is a security problem,
hmm
but it
yeah,
was so awesome. You could just make your own little
yeah,
HTML widgets, and that's honestly how I learned HTML.
yeah,
Was coding little widgets for
yeah.
Windows ME on the desktop. I think they called it like Active Spaces or
Right,
something like that. And it was part of
right,
95 and then 98, but it really sang in ME. Like you could have
right.
videos playing in there, you could push audio files. Like remember Real
Yeah.
Media? You could embed those into your desktop. It was
hmm
amazing. I really liked ME,
Yeah.
but also I had a computer where like every driver for the computer was signed, and this is
hmm
around the time
hmm
where driver signing started to come out. And I also
Right.
had a ghost image for those of you who are old enough to know Norton Ghost,
Yeah.
where if I messed anything up, I could just re-ghost it. It
Yeah.
was phenomenal. So for me, my
Right. Right.
perception of ME was completely different. Same for Vista. I rolled Vista out to hundreds of
Yeah.
computers, and I had it down to a science. But again, if you're not,
hmm
and your fleet isn't all completely exactly the same. I think they're HPZ
Right.
600 machines. Very, very nice.
Yeah.
It's going to be a different perception, but you're right. Like this
Right.
is a home operating system for a home user,
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
get people coming in like, yeah, I'm trying to run my whole business on Quicken on Windows ME.
Yeah.
Slow
Yeah.
it down.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, and that dashboard, that web page that you could append at the desktop, that then showed up as well in the digital dashboard
Yes.
product, which was an add-on to, I think, Exchange, when Exchange was still SQL based rather than a different engine.
Jet.
And
I think Jet V2 is what they eventually went to. Yeah.
and then um, and then with and then I was a product manager in SharePoint, which when it was
Nice.
still an Exchange-based product,
Oh, I didn't know that.
not when it was later
Was that
on it
back in
became
the
a SQL
Small Business Server 2003, like that kind of thing?
product. So I was there. I was doing that probably in 2001, 2002.
Gotcha. That's when I was learning SharePoint.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, SharePoint was very different. It made the migration to being SQL based, but and then when did SQL Server made this big change I remember one of the other things that happened, I think around the time I was there, either when I was there or a little bit before, when SQL Server uh, did some deal with Sybase, and Sybase became, or all the
Interesting.
code base of Sybase became SQL Server like 6 or 5.
Interesting.
Anyway, I don't know. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I haven't heard Sybase in a while, so I had to look that up as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
This IP
Sybase,
is,
Sybase. Yeah.
yeah, and I think it's still around. It's still being used, and it looks
Yeah.
like SAP now has it. But yeah, it's just one of
Hmm.
those things that good
Yeah.
database tech that's been around for a long time. A lot
Yeah.
of people have used it.
Yep.
Yeah, SQL Server was pretty phenomenal too. The early days of SharePoint are interesting though. Like
Yeah.
the goal of SharePoint was a little bit different than the goal of SharePoint now. But I think back in the day, correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong. So my understanding of it back then was like this is your company's intranet, is what it was specifically made for. Okay.
Yeah. Well, what's it now?
I think it's the productivity hub for a company.
Hmm.
It's a little bit different. So it's like where your document lifecycle stuff might go, for example.
Hmm.
Your CRM it could be in
Oh,
there,
okay. Yeah.
but it would be linked to from there, which kind of still makes it a portal.
Hmm.
Things like Teams, all their file storage is SharePoint. Again,
Hmm.
could be wrong, but that is definitely
Yeah.
one of the workflows. And then it looks like there's a large tie-in to like Office 365 now as well. So
Right.
instead of being like internal only,
Right.
it could also be external for an internal site, which is like
Right.
it's similar but not the same. So the method of deployment
Yeah.
is different. And it wasn't really a developer platform. I mean, you could develop on it
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah.
There was ASP ways of doing it, but these days it does look like building a custom app in
Right.
SharePoint is like
Right.
a thing people do, which is also like all this
And
is really cool.
yeah, and I remember one of the big stories that was, you know, that we talked about with SharePoint was before you had something like Microsoft Front Page, and Front Page would, you'd have one person build a front page site,
Right.
and then when another person wanted to build something similar, they just build another front page site. And when that first person had new information that should go in the original one, it was easier just to build a new front page site. And so you'd have hundreds of thousands, even at a normal sized company, hundreds of thousands of front page sites,
Yes.
and nobody could control them. And yet, one of the benefits of SharePoint was to bring them all into one place that was managed. And so, front page really became one of the front ends for SharePoint.
Absolutely, yeah. Front page became like the front end for SharePoint,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, there was always like you'd have your dev page and your
Yeah.
prod page for front page, but you would end up with again a lot of front page sprawl, at least
Yeah.
early on in the SharePoint stuff. I worked for a SharePoint
Yeah.
consulting firm at one point in time in my life, and again, I have nothing but love for SharePoint. Though I understand people,
Hmm.
there are some things people don't like about SharePoint,
Yeah.
but I think it's a
The
phenomenal.
biggest thing going against SharePoint for a long time was it's too easy to use,
Yeah.
too easy to install. It was easy to plop that CD in or DVD in and just install it, and it just worked. You didn't have to do anything. But in order to get a good installation, you really needed to think about it and think about your taxonomy and think about all the hierarchy of how you want information to sit. And if you didn't do that, it was bad.
Yeah, specifically things like SharePoint Wiki when that was released,
Yeah.
compared to running like was it the free wiki, the Wikimedia server.
MediaWiki.
Media
Media
Wiki
Wiki.
is
Yeah.
very very heavy, and people
Yeah.
don't realize that you really need a good caching layer to
Yeah.
make Media Wiki run, and they'll often
Yeah.
forget about it. Whereas on the
Yeah.
SharePoint side, setting up a wiki site was pretty good. It meant SQL Server prowess,
Yeah.
so you had to have a good SQL Server behind it. But otherwise, like
Right.
the wiki was great. You could actually use like full
Yeah.
taxonomies, like things that Confluence these days just doesn't have. You could
Yeah.
like in Confluence these days, it's harder to get like an undefined term turn into a blank
Mhm.
editable page, which SharePoint really
Right.
did well. So I'd say like
Mm.
Matt Williams, underline here, we'll fill this later, and then the next person that
Right.
comes along sees the page and is like, hey, there's a blank for Matt. I know Matt. I'll write that page.
Yeah.
You could click
Yeah.
on it, author the page, save it, and then it would immediately link back. It was amazing.
Right.
These days we're very much more structured, and the wiki web is kind of on Wikipedia. It is where you'll
Mhm.
mostly see people
Yeah.
creating like ad hoc sort of documentation.
Right.
You'll get it a little bit in GitHub and stuff like that, but even then those wikis are a little bit different.
Yeah.
Maybe my
And that's
check-in for
actually
this
one
week
of the
is
things.
yeah, go ahead.
And that's one of the things I like about Obsidian for note taking is
Right.
it has all those things kind of built in. What are
Someone's
you
asking
talking
what.
about?
Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We're talking about SharePoint, Mia. I'm extremely sorry. Is it two old folks talking about the citizen developer? I guess is what we're really talking about on the grand scale of things, and how Microsoft brought developing to consumers in a way that was accessible is what I really liked about SharePoint,
Yeah.
honestly. And these days, if you're looking for that type of experience, it would probably be something like a Wikipedia, maybe a WordPress,
Hmm.
possibly a Drupal, but I think probably like a WordPress, maybe even a Shopify or a Squarespace or something like that would be
Right.
of the same caliber or ilk. But honestly,
Well,
back
I
in the
don't
day,
know if
SharePoint was
those.
that.
I don't know if all those are that kind of idea today. I would think it would be more the no code things.
Oh
Whether
yeah,
you're starting
that's
with
another
an
good one.
Airtable or Coda, which is a better Airtable,
Yep.
and or there was this anyway, or what are some of the other ones? There's Darklang. There's a bunch of other no code
Right. Good point.
applications for building up applications without having to um, what do we think about the new meta thing? Is there a new
Uh,
meta thing?
well,
What's the new
there.
meta thing?
Okay, so I'm not gonna get too deep into like the internal politics here, but there's a metaverse, and there's a new metaverse meeting platform. I
Hmm.
believe this could be what Mia is talking about here. But my understanding is there is a oh, maybe it's the Quest Pro. It could be the Quest Pro that we're talking about. So the actual
Oh,
handset for it. It looks like there's a new yeah. Yeah, so the headset.
the
So
cup?
the cap.
Oh.
Yeah, so there's a couple things. So internally it looks like there's a new metric called MMH. So make Mark happy is what this project is referred to. And internally they're testing out the meeting platform. This is public news, so I'm not stealing
Mhm.
it from the inside. But apparently, just like we were talking about with projects, when you get a lot of people working behind them, the
Mhm.
internal team that's developing the project is still saying this, like not ready for prime time. But it
Right.
looks like internally, C-suite VPs are trying to say, "Hey, can we use this for our meetings going forward?" And there's like a
Right.
scramble. So like, does everybody have a headset? Can we make sure we get people
Right.
a headset? That kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
there's a little bit of figuring out like what the market fit might be, but at the same time, if we're going to dog food this inside of Meta, what does dog fooding it look like? What do people need? That kind of stuff. How
Right.
accessible is the platform? But yeah, the hardware looks awesome. I think a lot of the time we're looking at like a killer app, and if we can do VR meetings at work, I'm here for it. Honestly, I've not seen it yet. That's all.
Yeah.
Like
I
if
mean,
we could meet in
anything that's
Second Life, I'd do it.
trying to use the the Oculus stuff or other VR headsets
Mhm.
in this, like, okay, we got this cool tool. How can we apply it to something useful? Oh, let's do meetings. Or rather than, well, what's the actual problem we're trying to solve? Or what's the actual problem people need?
And listen, there is some problems. So I'm not sure if you've seen like the VTubers or anything like that. So the people who want to broadcast on the internet as a personality or persona that is not there. It could be for safety reasons. It could be
Hmm.
because let's
Mm.
just say one segment of the market gets a lot more harassed than another segment.
Hmm.
Totally understand. Maybe you want to be like a different persona online. I feel like the metaverse and to a lesser extent Second Life and to a greater extent all the video games out there with like rooms that you can join in
Right.
and talk to other people in. It does scratch that itch and allows people to actually I don't know feel like
Yeah.
they can share in a way that feels safe, which I think is
Yeah.
phenomenal. For
Yeah.
work meetings, that's where like it becomes a little bit harder for me to see the rubber hit the road. If you and I are working on like a digital sculpture together
Hmm.
for let's just say reInvent. We're going to reInvent, and the biggest thing we're going to deliver is a 3D sculpture, and we both want to work on it at the same time. I'd be hard pressed to say that
Sure.
there's any other way than using the Oculus for this. It's just
Sure.
that neither you nor I is a great sculptor, so like not the best use case. Like I can see, I can invent a
Yeah.
scenario and maybe understand the way
Yeah.
that it works, or maybe like a movie that you and I can experience together in
Hmm.
different locations while it plays around. Like imagine the
Hmm.
Jurassic World story, but you and I are both playing those
Right.
avatars in the movie, and we're getting into
Right.
the Jeep and or Jurassic Park. Sorry, not
Right.
Jurassic World. One of them's good, the other one's so so. But I can see that like a jump scare, kind of
Yeah.
cool. interactive thing
Yeah.
like team building. Let's go to this ridiculous island where there's dinosaurs and
Yeah.
somehow increase our bond together. Totally makes sense. Business meetings, I don't know.
Mm.
I should also say that like I do like the Facebook portal, which is a minority opinion as well, and that's that little screen that can like follow you around. It can go horizontal or
yeah.
vertical. It sits on a little stand. I think is a great idea. Again, to bring video meetings to people who don't understand
Hmm.
how to start a video call, how to get on Zoom, that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right.
And the time to shine was during COVID, and I think it did. I think some people really
Yeah.
liked it for that. So that's if they can bring that experience to whatever the headset or headset less VR
Yep.
world is, I think that's where.
Yep.
Again, this is just me kicking the tires, being a punter.
So we're 2 minutes to the top of the hour.
Oh shoot!
Any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, okay. So I'm just looking around my desk to see if I can find it. So you know those power banks? I'm sure we've talked
Uh-huh.
about this before. I finally went out and got an oversized Anker power bank. And what I
Oh, yeah?
noticed
Okay.
was, and this is like the weird effect of having a power bank that it's big, it's quite big, is that like I no longer need to search for a charger anymore. I'll just charge things from the power bank in my own house.
Yeah.
So if I'm away from an outlet and I'm pointing the room, I'll just like have the power bank sort of sitting beside me and do it.
Yeah.
It can like not charge a laptop, but run a laptop off of one of
Yeah.
these power
Yeah.
banks now. So I think what happened was like I understood they were a thing, and I had the little tiny ones here and there to like help top of my phone.
Yeah.
I didn't realize with a larger one, it can actually become sort of like a mobile outlet, which is like a whole
Mhm.
world of possibilities. So I
Yeah.
used it like on set to run my camera, for example, when the outlet was too far.
Yeah.
Like they're pretty amazing. And if you think of them as more
Yep.
of like a portable car battery as opposed to a
Yeah.
portable like AA battery, it really opens up the
Yeah.
possibilities. So like that's my big checkout. The one I used was
Yeah.
Anker. Matt's, I'm sure get recommendations, but like those
I mean,
portable
I had
batteries are
no,
amazing.
I don't have one anymore, but I did have one. Probably when I was still at Microsoft. I was a company called, I think it was called Hyperjuice,
Okay.
and it they sold with it they had a the not MagSafe. I think it was a MagSafe cable that went straight from their battery into the MacBook laptop,
Nice.
and that's why they went out of business, was because Apple sued them for using this special connector that you're not allowed to use.
Of course.
But was there something else?
That's it for me. Recommendations.
That was
like
I
look
I
at the
have
big
two
power
things.
bank.
Yeah, I have two things that I got, or that I yeah, two things recent. First off, I finally got a new pair. Well, this is actually just a case around the case of
Yeah.
the AirPods Pro 2,
Nice.
mostly because the previous set of AirPods Pro, one of them started getting noisy, and then I lost one of the ones on the plane. So I finally updated it with this. I've been without it for like, I don't know, 6 months. But finally got one of those, and then started watching Andor.
Oh, okay.
Have you watched Andor?
That's solid. No, I have not.
Andor. It's on Disney. And it's the new.
I thought I recognized
one of
name.
the new
It's
Star Wars.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, it's definitely one of the best, most well-produced and best programs of any type within the Star Wars universe, I guess.
It's high praise.
It is, I'd say it like, for the quality of the story and the quality of like what's actually going on, it beats out all the movies.
It's very UK centric, which is interesting. So because I was looking through the names and I didn't recognize any. The thing about the UK actors is like you may not know the name, but the pedigree is generally there. So like, is the acting good?
Yeah.
Okay. That's awesome. I definitely.
Yeah, it's been amazing.
My Disney Plus, I keep signing up for trials and then not extending them. I'll watch like a whole series. So maybe I'll wait for this to end and sign up again and watch it. As much as I love Disney,
Yeah, we definitely go through. We'll pick one of the channels. We'll subscribe for a month or two.
Right.
Subscribe to HBO while Game of Thrones is on,
right.
And even now, while this new version or new old Game of Thrones, which turns out to be not that great. And again, then get rid of it, and then get Stars while what is it, Outlander was playing, and then get rid of
Right.
it, and then Disney we've held on for a long time just because Stella,
You have a child. I
um,
think that makes sense. Yeah.
and Amazon Prime Video because, well, it's Prime, Amazon Prime, so we got the shipping, and I guess that's really the only channels we've got now. So, but yeah, oh, and of course Apple TV, because everything they come out with is usually pretty great.
Surprisingly okay. Yeah. Which was also
Yeah.
news to me. All right. Well, that was a solid set. I'm surprised.
Okay.
You know these streams come on with no topic in mind. So yeah, it seemed to work pretty well.
Yeah. We got to work on coming up with a good thing next time.
Whew, just as I
Not
sneeze. Yeah.
sneezes.
Yeah, a whole episode of just sneeze noises. Yeah, I think that's great. And Mia, thank you very much for the questions and popping into the chat. We love that, obviously.
Yeah.
Any type of audience interaction gets us going. But yeah, thank you so much, Matt. It's always good talking to you.
All right.
I
Thanks.
think
Yeah,
next
it
week
is.
I'll be at a conference, so I won't be here for this. But I don't know if we could change the time or
Okay.
figure something out. But
So, or we can change the time, or
that
we
works.
can use that time to think of a topic.
Oh, I like it. We'll cancel our scheduled meeting, but please think about what you want to do for the next one. We require an agenda
That's
prior
right.
to starting this meeting again. Always a good circle
That's
back.
right. Yep. Awesome.
Okay.
See you next time.
Folks. Let's see if we can find
And
the
broadcast.
close stream. Yeah.